something under the bed. Carrie Maguire had a secret. Now, it is fairly common for people to have secrets, especially if you are 11. Though it may be uncomfortable for your parents, having secrets is an essential part of childhood. Whether it be peeking at an unwrapped present, stealing something that one shouldn't have, or climbing a tree that an adult told you specifically not to, you have kept a secret at one point in time in your life. And you may have more when you grow up. Carrie wasn't entirely someone who kept secrets because she was not one to look for secrets to keep. She was not an adventurous girl by nature. In fact, she was known for being quite scared of most things. If a bee were to fly near her, she would quickly dodge out of the way as if it were on a mission to attack her specifically. She would never jump off of the diving board at a pool because she was afraid of heights, and the thought of hitting her head at the bottom was too terrible a thing for her to consider. She would even be cautious of taking 2 pain pills instead of 1, just in case an overdose were to occur. Carrie didn't have many secrets, which made this secret especially large. It was a secret that had kept her up at night for weeks. Now, a secret that she would not dare tell her friends or teachers about. A secret too terrifying to say in pleasant company. Carrie Maguire knew that there was something under her bed. You may be under the impression that she was mistaken. You may have heard that it is highly unlikely that there was something under her bed. You might have even conducted your own investigation and looked under your own bed to only find a box filled with old toys or the occasional dust bunny. But Carrie didn't think that there was something under her bed. She knew that there was something under her bed. It first began on a Friday. She had turned out the light and rested her head against her pillow when she heard a strange, low groaning sound. At first she had thought it might have been her house, for her walls would creak and her roof would rumble from the running of squirrels from time to time. But she soon realized that this was not the typical groaning that she was accustomed to. No, this groaning sounded organic, almost animal-like in its nature. It reminded her of when one of her neighbor's mean dog would growl at her from next door. A growl that started out low and quiet, a growl of warning. It was a sound that she did not take lightly. She shifted to her side, hoping that it was just the mattress being fussy. But the growling continued. She held her stomach, thinking that perhaps it was something she had eaten. But it did not rumble. She quickly grabbed her pillow and folded it around her head, covering her ears. But even through the muffled fabric of the cushion, she could still hear it in a low steady drone. Carrie took off the pillow and looked around the room, unsure of what to do. She had tried every resource that she had at her disposal, and nothing worked. It seemed that the best course of action was to wake her parents. Upset with her as they may be, they would soon realize that getting them up at this hour would be worth taking care of whatever lurked underneath her bed. To Austin Bouse. She whipped off the covers and, very gently, placed her feet on the floor. As her bare feet touched the smooth, cold, wood paneling, the growling grew even more aggressive and even more vicious than before. The growl had turned into a snarl, and she could now hear the thing under the bed breathing heavily, like an old locomotive train or a car engine roaring to life. It sounded as if the thing was preparing to charge out from under her bed. At that moment, Carrie decided to get a head start, and bolted out of her room. "Mum!" she screamed as she ran out and down the hallway. "Dad! Help!" She reached the door to her parents' room and opened it. They had already turned on their lamp on the bedside table when she entered. "What is it?" her mother said, jolting out of bed. "What's wrong? Is everything okay, honey?" her father asked, fumbling with his glasses. There's something in my room," Carrie said, out of breath. "Your room?" Her mother glanced at her father. "Yeah, under my bed," she said with the same terror that one might use when alerting to someone that their house was on fire. But her parents did not share that same fear. In fact, they looked relieved. They each breathed out a sigh of relief. Her father fell back onto the bed and laughed. It confused her, yes, but it did not surprise her. Adults had a way of reacting to children, especially their own, in strange ways. She had been told many times that she had been silly, or what was the word that they had used? Overdramatic for being afraid of this thing or that. But she was certain that such a concern as something alive under her bed would cause then some alarm. "Oh, sweetie," her mother came to her, smiling, "there's nothing under your bed." "Yes there is," Carrie said with conviction. "I heard it." Her mother was using the same smile and the same tone that she had used whenever she was not taking her seriously. Carrie never liked it. "Do you want me to look at it with you?" "Yes." She wanted to cry out, but she could only nod. "Okay, then." Her mother looked at her father, who yawned and took off his glasses. She took her hand and followed her out of the room. Carrie dragged her down the hallway as quickly as she could, eager to show her proof of what terrorized her, but also afraid of what the thing would do to her mother if she got too close to it. "It's under there." She pointed to the scene of the crime as her mother flipped on the light switch. "Let's see here." Her mother knelt down on the side of the bed and looked under it. She stared for a moment in silence. "Oh," she finally said. "Oh my gosh. See?" Carrie said from behind her. "I told you there was something there. I've been looking all over for this thing." She turned around, holding one of her red heels, the same one her daughter had tried on while she was out of the house and forgot to return. One of Carrie's few minor secrets. "No," Carrie slapped the front of her own face with her palm. "I'm telling you, Mom, I heard something." "Was it a nightmare?" "Sometimes I have nightmares and it feels like I'm awake." "I was awake," Carrie said as if she had just asked her if fish swim in the ocean. It was a growling sound and it was coming from right under there. She jabbed a finger towards the bed like a judge to the guilty. "Well," her mother sighed, "if it happens again, I'll look again. Okay?" She kissed her on the forehead. "Night. Night," Carrie mumbled as her mom got up and left, shutting off the lights behind her. She sighed and got back into bed. Contrary to what her mother said, it was not a question of whether if the thing under her bed would return, but when. Carrie slept soundly for the rest of the night, only speaking of it briefly the next morning with her parents. Then it came back the next night, and the next night, and the next night. The thing under her bed returned and growled at her in the dark. She was certain that if she were to tell her mom, one of two things would happen. Either she would finally see the thing under the bed, or she would not, and then get annoyed with her for waking her up to check on something that supposedly was not there. She had thought that the former would be nice. To be proven right was something she was not ashamed of liking, but she then realized that the latter outweighed the brief moment of satisfaction. It was not uncommon for her parents to be annoyed with her when she was afraid of something. They could lose their patience quickly, and she did not like it when they would make a face at her as if they just tasted something sour, or when they told her to get over it. So, she hoped the thing under the bed would eventually leave. But it never did. It kept her up night after night for weeks on end. Finally, she had had enough. If you were to go without sleeping for as long as she had, you would most likely face anything. If it meant getting some shut-eye. She flung back the covers and stared at the edge of the bed, then planted her feet onto the wood. She then gently crouched down with her head turned in the other direction, so that she wouldn't have to face the thing. Until she was ready, she waited for a moment and then turned her head. The thing was surrounded by darkness. She could not tell where the thing began and where it ended. All she could see were two glowing red eyes staring at her above a set of razor-sharp teeth. Carrie stayed as still as she possibly could, so still in fact, that if it weren't for her breathing you would think she was a wax statue of a little girl instead of a real one. She had read somewhere that some animals see are based on movement, and she hoped that was the case for this particular nocturnal creature. But that theory was soon proven incorrect, for even before she could even complete such a thought, the thing grabbed her. Cold black paws gripped her wrists and pulled her into the dark. Before she had time to scream, a gasp escaped her mouth as she was yanked into some place unknowable. The red eyes of the creature were the only lights that she saw in the inky blackness. Her hands and knees were no longer dragging across the wood of her bedroom floor, but through dry leaves and dirt. She fell onto the ground. Another gasp coming out of her lips as her jaw hit the dirt. She rubbed it and looked around. She was still in total darkness, but this felt different than the one that she had just traveled through. This felt like some type of enclosure, a space that had walls and a ceiling, but no lights that she was aware of. Carrie moved her hands about and flinched as she touched damp rocky walls. She listened and heard the faint trickle of water coming out of a crevice far away. She grabbed her shoulders as a steady gust of cold wind blew against her. She realized that she was now sitting in a cave. "Hello?" she asked aloud, but the echo of her voice was the only thing that answered back. Is anyone there?" she asked, hoping anyone would return her query. The reply that came back was one that she had not been hoping for. Light shined in the cave, but not a welcoming one. It was the same scarlet glow that she saw from underneath her bed, however this time the eyes had multiplied. Pair upon pair of glowing eyes shone around her. As her own eyes adjusted to it, she saw the thing and its siblings in all their horrible glory. They each had the same set of white fangs that the thing carried, but she now saw that the eyes and jaws were attached to bodies of black fur. No, not fur, smoke. Black smoke took the forms of hound-like animals. They flanked around her on all fours, ears turned back with the stiffness of a wolf or a fox. Their growls sang to her in a chorus of terror. Each one began to bark at her in animal voices that she could not recognize. They were neither canine, feline, bird, or ape, but something else entirely alien to her ears. "Help!" She screamed as loud as she could and ran, but she only reached a few steps until she fell to the ground once more. She spun around and saw that one of the monsters had clutched the fabric of her pajama pants with its teeth and was dragging her deeper into the cave. "Someone, please!" she screamed as she was being dragged further and further down the dark, cold corridor. "Help!" Tears streamed down her face as she gazed upon the army of beats escorting her, white fangs smiling at her, possibly out of hunger. "Help!"